Hello and welcome to the 97th running of the Melbourne AWS user group. We're back for what is our 9th event this year, and I think it's our 6th under lockdowns, 5th under lockdown. I'm not sure. The year's going on. We're still here, still giving presentations, and a big thanks to everybody who's still a part of this community and keeping it rolling. The light is obviously, or hopefully, at the end of the tunnel, and while we don't think we're likely to get back to physical events this year, it's looking good for being able to return to something resembling normal next year, so fingers crossed for that. Until then, we've got 2 great presentations tonight, so let's get right into it. Where are my slides? See if this wants to work for me now. Slides. There we go. So first up tonight we have the introductions. This way. So do the introduction, same as normal. And then we have our news segments with Ian and friends. JM's back tonight after a brief hiatus. Looking forward to that segment. Then we have our first presentation from Kushik. It's another look at the well-architected framework. We haven't had one of these for a few years, so this is a really good timing to come back in and go back through what the well-architected framework means and how important it still is. And then Ian has stepped in to try and fill the gaps in AWS. So looking forward to that one too. And then we'll have a wrap up, and then we have our post-event social chat on Zoom. All right, let's see if this is going to advance. So the format for tonight, which is probably familiar if you've been around for a little while now, format for tonight is we will have our presentation as normal. You are encouraged to ask questions online, either in Slack in the #Melbourne channel, or in any channel really. On Twitter using the AWS Melb hashtag, or you can ask right in the chat there on YouTube. After the presentation, myself, I'll jump back on and ask the questions of Kushik and Ian on your behalf. We'd also appreciate any comments, like if you want to have any input that you'd like to add to the show. I know Kushik's got some interactivity in his presentation as well, so I'm sure he'd love some feedback from that. Throw all of that into the chat there on YouTube, and we will incorporate that into the show as we go. As always, we'd love to thank our gold sponsor Enabler for their support this year and their support last year, and for keeping faith with us throughout this period. We couldn't put these events on without their help. We'd also like to thank our silver sponsors AC3, CMD, and Do It International. And we'd like to give out a big congratulations as well to CMD for being named one of the AWS consultancies of the year. So if I had a soundboard, this is where I'd insert the applause for that. So well done to those guys. I believe they posted in the jobs channel today too. They're looking to both for people. So definitely check that out if you're looking for work. Got it all up. So just a quick overview of who we are. My name is Rob. I'm at Bok on Slack, at Bok_ on Twitter. And my co-host is Ian Schwartz. He'll be on in the news segment in just a moment. As always, just a general reminder that we don't work for AWS. We are members of this community the same as you guys are. And that brings a lot of latitude. Like obviously we work in and around AWS every day, but we're also not afraid to call things as they see it, and we welcome any and all feedback or any and all opinions on AWS and AWS's products that you might like to bring. And a great place to do that is our Slack team. We have one of the largest Slack teams in Australia now, or at least open source community Slack teams. There's a bunch of great channels on there. It's a great place to talk announcements. AWS outages is a common one whenever AP Southeast 2 goes down. That's a very busy channel. We have channels for volunteering, and as I mentioned before, there's job posts and stuff on there as well. There's a lot of people active during the day, so it's a great place to ask any AWS questions you have. But there are other ways to get involved with the community as well. We're obviously always on the lookout for speakers, and especially this time of year, speakers is our most difficult thing to find. On a normal average year, we normally have dozens of speakers lining up around August, September. This year we've had none. So it's getting more difficult. So if you do have a topic, even if you're not sure whether it's worth talking about, get in contact, let us know. We're more than happy to work through any ideas you have and to help bring your presentation to light. We also not really looking for sponsors right now, but that's also a great way to get involved with the community. And more directly, we're always looking for volunteers. There's always things that need to be done, no matter how big or how small. So just a quick look at what else is going on around in Melbourne at the moment. The Amazon Alexa Meetup, I think, is having their first online-only event, which just in time for it to stop being online-only, but that's okay. So they're going to give you an introduction to Alexa conversations, and it's a hands-on workshop where they work through creating those with you. That is coming up on the 10th of October. Hello, next slide. There we go. And not an event that's on just yet, but the AWS Community Days for ANZ region is looking for speakers. So first of all, if you'd like to present at those, they're on the link. I always get that wrong. The link down there will take you to their Call for Papers website, where you can submit on any of these topics. And I might like to add that if you are thinking of giving a presentation at the Community Day, the user group is a great place to practice. So come on, bring your presentations. I think that's everything that I have. Yep, that's all of it. So I will throw over to Ian and JM for what's new in AWS this month.
Well, thanks for that intro, Rob. And as you said, we're back with what's new in AWS. And today, I'm once again joined by a good friend, JM.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here again live. Very excited.
Yep. So let's get in this. We're finally in ANZ. Once again, we have something for more than just Australia.
Yes, we have New Zealand this time again with CloudFront in New Zealand with 2 new endpoint edge location in Auckland, and AWS is saying that probably we're into a 50% increase in traffic and responsiveness of the application for anything run in Australia. So that's good for the Kiwis.
Yep, it's pretty great. The other thing we've talked about M6G and R6G instance types before. Last month we mentioned they're available for RDS in preview. And now that's even available in Sydney if you want to play and hopefully see that it doesn't impact anything except your bill.
Yes, so I had a look. It's 11% cheaper. So same instance, like I take an M6G extra large to compare an M5 X extra large, 11.1% cheaper. So that will be pretty cool. Only supported though MySQL 8 and Postgres 12 at the moment, and with Aurora and MariaDB coming soon. And then we have Lex.
Yep. Most important one, Lex now supports Australian English. In fact, it supported Australian English before British English. So I guess that's an extra bonus here. And
AWS called Australian English a dialect, which is quite interesting in the in the announcement. So we had already Polly for speaking Australian voices with Russell and Nicole in Polly, and now we have the input who can be recognized by Lex. So Lex is automatic speech recognition based on Alexa that you can use in AWS Connect or other products. So very excited that we have end-to-end Australian languages.
Let's have a look at serverless. Some good things here as well. Guess the one at the top jumps out a bit with API Gateway supporting MTLS.
Yeah, that's the first cloud to support MTLS on any of the APIs. So that's really excited. I don't know, maybe I'll do a quick what mutual TLS is. I mean, usually you use a TLS for connecting to your website, but mutual TLS is having a certificate on both sides, and the client needs to present a certificate as well to make sure that they're both mutually authenticated. So that's needed for open banking, for all the consumer data rights needed by law. So that's very exciting that you can do that now directly on API Gateway instead of using other product or other type of CDN before. So very cool.
Yep. Also a bunch of things for step functions to make that more useful. X-ray support and bigger payloads are probably the big items there.
Yeah, bigger payload is to be able to integrate with other products who already have bigger payload like Lambda, SNS, SQS. So before it was limited to 32,000 characters, now it's 256K, so which is pretty good. And then X-ray, obviously, that's really important to be able to trace the traffic and the pain point of your workflow. So a very good addition to have X-ray on step function now.
Yep. Let's have a look at the containers. And we only have 10 minutes, so we can't dive deep into everything here. Bottle Rocket is GA. If you don't remember, Bottle Rocket is AWS's container-specific OS. So basically, this is what you would run on your instances, and your containers can then run more securely. So by its GA means that you can, at least for EKS, it is now fully supported. ECS is still in beta, even though Bottle Rocket as a whole is GA. But nonetheless, it's definitely a good improvement on keeping your container workload secure.
So very important, it's an operating system. You can find the IMI, you have ARM available and x86, but there is no shell on that box. So you have a container admin that you can enable to be able to do maintenance, but AWS recommends you to disable that container. And then there is a controller container as well that you need to use to set up the API and stuff like that inside the node. So use System Manager to do that. So very much secure. You have SE Linux. You have DM Verity mapping for verifying the target and really limiting the rootkit-based attacks you can have on other operating systems. So very interesting. Very good. Looking forward to test it actually.
Yeah. Another very nice addition on the security side for containers is that for EKS, we can now have security groups per pod, which means that until this announcement, if you had multiple workloads running on the same EKS cluster, they would all share the same security groups, which means that they would have that possibly unrelated services would have access to the same databases and things like that. So being able to specify them for pods makes that a lot better.
Yeah, and you need the Kubernetes 117. You can't use pod on Fargate, and you can't use a Windows node, obviously. And you need to use Nitro EC2 instances, which is the M5, C5, and M6 family. And you need the new Sienna plugin as well, 1.71. So you still need to open a couple of security groups though, to the inbound communication from the cluster security group and then for DNS. But otherwise, it's much more secure to be able to run a security group on EKS for each pod and matching parity with ECS now.
On the dev and ops side, there was a lot to do with X-ray. If you're a Java developer, I'm sure auto instrumentation will be really nice, but personally, I quite like the idea of the anomaly detection for inside. I think there's a typo in there, but the anomaly detection. Basically, this allows X-Ray to filter up things that it thinks are wrong, which is obviously a good thing to have.
Yeah, he helped you to see the root cause analysis very quickly. He organized all the trace. It's really good, and it's just $1 extra per trace recorded. So X-ray tracing is $5 per 1 million trace, and this one is you add another $1 to be able to use that. So I think it's a very good product. Going to help a lot to find quickly problems in your microservices and serverless environment.
Yep. Based on the time, we'll skip to security. AWS SSO now has an API and CloudFormation support. Usually, this is the point where I would go deep into discussing this, but I have a half-hour slot later tonight where I will already cover all of this. So, unless you have something you definitely want to say.
Just CloudFormation support with, you can create assignment and permission set what was a very painful things to do before. So I'm sure you're very happy with that improvement of that API. Finally, we have an API for that.
Yeah.
CloudFront TLS 1.3, that's pretty cool as well. TLS 1.3 now just required one round trip to be able to do the handshake for SSL. To compare, TLS 1.2 needed 2. AWS think that there is much more improvement in the first byte we're going to reach your browser. So that's pretty good for everyone who wants to use that.
Then in other cool stuff, T4 instances. It should have said T4G instances because these are just like the M6G, R6G, C6G. These are all ARM-based instances, and at the moment they're free, or at least you can run one.
Yeah, not exactly free, unfortunately. But if you have to compare them with T3, they are 19% cheaper. So that's really a big saving already. And AWS give you for free a T4G macro, which is 2 CPU, 1 gig memory until the end of the year for free to play with. So that's good. Unfortunately, only Virginia, Ohio, Oregon, Mumbai, Tokyo, Frankfurt, and Ireland, nothing in Sydney, but you can play with it in the US East region for free until the end of the year.
Yep, and hopefully they'll come here soon enough.
Yeah.
Similarly to APIs for SSO, another service that didn't have any APIs was Connect, and really happy to see that AWS added APIs for that as well. So that's great and saves a lot of annoyances.
Yeah, to be able to change live or through CI/CD pipeline your contact flow or your routing profile. So that's going back more to automation and DevOps for your contact flow. That's a really good improvement on this. AWS Perspective, that's a really interesting product. It's a collection of products, in fact, from AWS who bring a solution to be able to do diagram for what you have inside your AWS account and put some pricing on it. I tested it, that's fun. Doesn't support everything, just support 38 resources. Doesn't support EKS, for example, but support ECS. But it's to run it's $535 US a month because there is an Elasticsearch in there is Neptune database, Incognito, DynamoDB. There is a lot of stuff running. But it's a very good start to be able to visualize what you have in your AWS account and put some pricing on each resources. Cool product.
Cool.
And the last one, I think AWS backup support for application consistency for Microsoft workload. That was a massive pain for a lot of people who use Windows with SQL, Exchange, or other product of Microsoft. Now AWS Backup can talk to System Manager, put the hard drive in VSS mode, enable, and then do the snapshot, and then revert back. So you have now consistent backup with using AWS Backup on Windows. So that's a very massive improvement, and people had to do Lambda function and script before, so that's pretty cool.
Yep, it is. Cool. But with that, we're going to hand it over to Rob and Kaushik. Just remember, we also have a podcast where we'll go a lot deeper into all of this. So keep an ear out, I guess, for that. And for now, I'll hand it back to Rob.
Good night, everyone.
Hello, thank you, Ian and JM. Another great look at the news. First up tonight, we have Kaushik is going to take us through the well-architected framework. Kaushik is an avid cloud practitioner with experience obviously in the well-architected solutions as an ambassador for cloud technologies and digital transformations. I'll let him take you through what the well-architected framework is, and it's about time we all had a refresher, so I'm looking forward to this one. Throw it over now.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Rob. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for having me on this user group. So, hope you see my screen. Is my all right? All right, perfect. Okay. So, as I said, as Rob said, I'm Kaushik, working with Blazeland Technologies, and today we'll be talking about well-architected framework and its adoption in businesses. We'll do a quick hands-on as well. I'm a practitioner of well-architected reviews as part of Blazeland, and being an APN ambassador, working with Aryan, get to connect. So there are a lot of pros and cons of this COVID scenario. Due to the COVID scenario, I'm in a position to talk to you folks in this user group, but at the same time, not able to network and get your feedback one-on-one. So keeping that in mind, there'll be a few questions I'll be throwing around and hope to get your feedback in the comments as we move ahead, right? All right, so that's the agenda. We'll have a quick run through of what the well-architected framework is, what are the 5 pillars of the framework, and of course, we'll do a quick hands-on review of this particular, each of these pillars. All right. So going on, what is the well-architected framework? The well-architected framework is something which is built by AWS as a guide for the AWS adopters and those who use AWS. Though it says it's developed by AWS, it is not restricted only to AWS. It can be used beyond any other cloud providers, even on your on-prem infrastructure. So basically, this is basic principles and a checklist, so to say, of all your best practices that you need to perform on your infrastructure and in your ecosystem, applications, operations, and beyond, right? So what are the 5 pillars? We'll talk about that, but then give you a quick run through of its inception. AWS the well-architected framework, or the WA framework as they call it, was ideated, and the inception happened in early 2012 by the AWS engineers based on the reviews and the interviews and discussions that they have with so many of their enterprise customers, right? With that, they build in the pillars. For each pillar, they set up the design principles, and these will set the foundation for it. And over time, they started to build a checklist, so to say, for each of these design principles. And that is what culminated to be the questions, which is part of the well-architected tool that any one of you can find in the AWS console, right? So all said and done, why would they like to adopt the well-architected framework? Why would they want to do that, right? So basically, first thing is to learn and adapt AWS best practices. They want to do that so that all the implementation is based on the best practices set out. Second is basically to mitigate risk, right? All of your implementations that you have, you want to ensure that the risk is mitigated right at the butt instead of it exponentially growing and bursting at the end. Then you want to make data-backed decisions. With data-backed decisions, be it a DNB, a digital native business, or an enterprise, these data-backed decisions is very critical. And that's what, if you follow the framework, this enables you to do that. And of course, faster time to the market, you automate things, human intervention is low, and then that enables you to build and deploy faster. So this is what you would get by adopting well-architected framework and its design principles based on these pillars. So a quick one, what the well-architected pillars are. So these are the 5 pillars that we have that we'll be talking about today. But here I want to get a quick feedback from you guys in the comments, based on whatever you've done till date on AWS or not, for your organization, for you, what is the most critical pillar for you guys? Maybe you can just drop in your comments, just one of those pillars, which is most important for you or for your org. I understand there's a bit of lag between the stream. I'll wait for your comments on that. So with various reviews and discussions that we have done with various customers, there are a couple of them that always stand out with the customers, and that has been the case with majority of them, right? And I can tell you about them why. So yes, Rob suggests it has to be security. Hassan says performance. Chris suggests security as a day 0 activity. Yes, I totally agree. So with many of our customers, as I would like to call it, the most popular pillars that they want to do is security and cost optimization, because everyone wants to save money, right? And they want to ensure it is secure and they don't make it to the news for the wrong reasons. So these are the 2 pillars that we will concentrate during our talk today with the time constraints. And the other 3 pillars, we'll also go through the design principles, time permitting, and have a quick run through of them. So quickly jumping into the cost optimization pillar there, right? So these design principles is what defines all of the design principles, and we'll go through each of them in detail, right? So the first one, so basically is adopt a consumption model. So be it a new customer who is using AWS or a new user who is using AWS, or be an enterprise who has been using AWS for a long time, it is not too late to adopt this, right? That having said, if you're already using it and you have an infrastructure and have an ecosystem in place, it might need a lot more planning. But if you're an early adopter right now, then this is a good time to start with the well-architected best practices across all the pillars. So why adopt a consumption model? When I say that, what is it? First thing is focus on right-sizing your environment, right? Have the right infrastructure to support your workload. So right-sizing is very critical, and that leads to cost saving is one thing. Second one is based on your environments, be it production or let's say it's a non-production environment. Non-production, non-working hours, try and schedule it, automate your schedule to shut down your instances. That's what we say, like schedule non-critical resources, right? And savings plan or reserved instances. Reserved instances and savings plan is like a low-hanging fruit. If you have done the right sizing and you know what are the instances that you're going to use and you have a forecast, you could save up to 70% 30 to 70% based on these plans that you have, right? So this is something that to look at. But before you adopt any of these savings plan, which is a logical entity in the pricing terms, be sure that you have right size and figured out what is, you have a roadmap of your instances. So that's one. Second is measure overall efficiency, right? Ensure that your cost of maintenance is lower as compared to what your total, output is going to be. Ensure that your business output, you're measuring your business output of your workload. The target has to be that you reduce cost and increase output. All right. So that's one critical aspect when you start measuring, which is what will help you to make data-backed decisions. All right. So next is analyze and attribute expenditure, right? In which we say, how are you going to measure it? How are you going to know who is using what? So consider an organization with various departments and you are using maybe same account or different accounts. How are we going to even attribute those costs? How are we going to define your cost centers? And which is a huge pain point for enterprise customers, and especially who have multiple accounts or even multiple departments using the infrastructure, right? So ensure you are tagging and defining a structure and measure using tools that are available in AWS, which we'll talk about, and then define the ownership so that you have a cost, cost assignment or cost center defined for your workloads. Next, it would be as a generic one, and those who are using AWS would see the benefits of why stop spending money on data centers and move to cloud. Why in the long run or in short-term goal, why using cloud infrastructure is a time-saving capability. And then, of course, use managed services to reduce cost of ownership. So these two critical points, which is self-explanatory as a design principle, is something that anyone can take up and understand for their workload. So what are the best practices and what are the enablers for them? You need to be aware of your expenditure. And how do you do that is using these tools like Cost Explorer and AWS budgets, optimizing and using cost of effective resources, and ensure that you have used Trusted Advisor to get these suggestions, or use CloudFront to ensure that there is access and reduced access to your source and so on and so forth. This is one of them. And then the savings plan, of course, savings or reserved instance. Matching supply and demand, don't over provision, don't under provision, ensure you have right sized it, and use scheduling and use auto scaling capability, and optimize over time, right? Keep reviewing it and ensure that you are optimally using your infrastructure and adopt newer features. So this is something which is common right from performance, performance, cost, security, everywhere. Ensure you are adopting newer features, which helps you to save cost, because AWS, as the team mentioned today earlier, JM and Arjun mentioned that newer features are coming in with a lower cost, better performance and lower cost. So that's why it's critical to keep evaluating newer features coming in through. All right. So in summary, start small, periodical review to right size and adopt new technology. Establish cost of ownership. This will help you to monitor, analyze, and attribute the cost, which is very critical. Automate and use managed services. So that's what would define the cost pillar, right? Any questions, maybe drop in your comments. We'll take it up at the end as to why and how we could do that. The next pillar that we will talk about is security pillar, right? So security pillar, which again, small or big, is the most critical for anyone, and it's a day zero job, right? As rightly put, it is a day zero job. That's the first thing anyone should be thinking about even before starting around in the ecosystem. All right, so we'll go through each of these design principles as to what it is and how do we work around it, right? Quick question. So for those who are new and those who are around, have you heard about the shared responsibility model, right? So quick review of it. What is a shared responsibility model? If you would see here, right, what is AWS's responsibility? Anything off the cloud, the security of the cloud is AWS's responsibility, be it its infrastructure, physical, infrastructure, or at managed services level patching them, or managed services provided by them patching them, networking layer, anything of it is AWS's responsibility. If you come, what is the shared responsibility of the customer is anything in the cloud or on the cloud. Your application that you deploy, the way you provision your ecosystem, the way you configure your security groups, right? Which port do you keep it open for the internet, which you don't? All of this is your responsibility as a AWS user. So this is what the shared model is all about, which sets basis for the design principles, and hence I wanted to call that out. So the first design principle that we'll be talking about, implement a strong identity foundation. So as many users, you would have many departments having different skill sets, right? Everyone would have different skill sets, and let's say a DBA team would have anything with respect to DBA. Someone who's just learning AWS will have very limited understanding of how to use AWS services. So do you want to give them admin usage? No. Practice what is called the least privilege access to ensure that we always give what is required to that particular user, though he's a pro or an expert in using AWS services. Limit them so that if at all it gets compromised, the blast radius is minimal, right? So ensure we always practice giving least privilege access. Then the next point is separation of duties. AWS has few recommendations to do. Something which says that always predefine what is it, a database user, what is a compute user, and or maybe let's say a developer who needs their access, you give them only that, and specify a different IAM user who can manage only IAM access and none of the other services. The other suggestion that is given is to define a separate KMS user to ensure the security of how we provision and use KMS service. So these are the few suggestions that are there, and that's how you could segregate the duties and ensure that you give access to them based on their duties, right? And again, centralize and automate. When I say centralize and automate, it could be where all of your accesses are managed using your AD, right? If let's say you are an enterprise with thousands of users, how are you going to manage and automate, manage the users giving access, who's joining in, who is going to leave the organization? How do you manage them? So best would be to centralize, saying to a IAM account and ensuring all the users are there, or if you have an AD, access them via an AD, an Active Directory connectivity, and ensure that IAM access is provided based on the user role in your AD. So try and centralize it to one place and manage it there and automate it. Automate all of your, let's say, password rotation, automate cleansing of users, those are inactive for more than 90 days. All of those has to be automated. So these are a few examples that I'm talking about, right? What is the next one is enable traceability. One is once you have set up the rules, ensure you're able to trace them, and in case of any eventuality, you are able to track back and say what has happened and how it has happened, right? So first thing for that is to monitor. You monitor and then you alert. How, to alert, ensure that, and you have an SOP in place based on that alert as well. So that is one. Next is audit actions and changes. How are you going to ensure? So you have periodical audits saying that what are the changes happening by whom and how, and if at all, when is one other point that you want to check for, which will be applicable for some organizations, right? Next is automate. As I mentioned before, ensure if there is alert, how to automate, if the SOP in place, what are the actions to be taken. Automation could be just getting an Slack alert or an email, or triggering a Lambda function to remediate that as well. So how do you automate that, and to what extent, based on what are your requirements over there? The next design principle is apply security at all layers. So basically, when we say at all layers, is right from your application, security, as basic as not using, using your SSL at your network layer, using WAF, and so anything and everything at every different layer, you ensure that you have security. At the application layer, you have your own, authentication system. At the infrastructure layer, you have your IAM, access. You use only roles, and you don't use IAM, user keys, and for the interaction between the infrastructure and the application, and so on and so forth. So that's to ensure defense in depth approach, where we have security at all layers taken into consideration. The next one is automate security best practices, which your security team would have based on your SIAM and other details that you would keep in mind, is to ensure that you templatize your implementation. From a security aspect, templatization could range from having your golden image so that you have hardened them and ensure that you have a templatized way of doing it. The other way is your deployment and adoption, where you have cloud formation templates and you use only them to do any of the deployments to ensure minimal human interactivity or human intervention. And that's the way you templatize and automate it to reduce security risk. Right. So moving forward, the other design principles at launch, and very self-explanatory, is protect data in transit and in rest, be it in, let's say, encrypting your RDS, your EBS volumes, or ensuring that you have your policy in S3 saying that all the objects accessed through from S3 are only over HTTPS, only with SSL, right? So that's something that you can implement. And keeping people away from data, which is ensuring there's no direct access to data, be it in S3, be it in your databases, or to your application only via Bastion or something of that sort. But ensure that minimal access is provided to the users or the developers in this case. And prepare. So all said and done, it's an ongoing activity. You need to be prepared for security events, and you need to have proper, SOP in place to ensure that you can take remediative actions in case of an security event, right? So what are the best practices and what are the enablers for them? Identity and access management. So you use IAM and STS. Detective controls, CloudWatch, Config, and CloudTrail. CloudWatch, as you would know, for all your events. Config to ensure that all of your ecosystem is ensured and you're monitoring them, and you can have time-based monitoring based on that, and CloudTrail for monitoring and tracing all your activities in your account. Infrastructure protection is using VPCs, ensuring you use your VPC. It is a very powerful tool and can be used if used efficiently, can ensure that your environment and ecosystem is secure. Using security groups, and then hardening your AMIs. So these are the few things. Data protection, encryption, security groups, again, certificate manager, AWS certificate manager. And for incident response, again, how do you manage using CloudWatch and EventBridge and CloudFormation? So in summary, as someone rightly put in there, that security is a day zero activity and will always be, but it's also an ongoing activity. So ensure that that's on top of your mind always. Beyond that, being aware of the shared responsibility model will always keep you, you will ensure that you are taking care of what you need to. So be aware of the shared responsibility model and automate and templatize this, reduce the risk to a great, and always prepare for the worst case scenario. So that was a quick summary. So I think in time check, we have another 10 minutes, Rob. I think with the, about 3 minutes. So, all right. So with that, I think what I would do is we'll quickly go to the demo because these are what the pillars have, design principles have, and I think we if given an opportunity, we cover it during a different session, and we'll go through them. But I'm just gonna go through to the next slide right away. Give me a second. All right. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, as this is recorded, maybe you could just go through at a later stage what are the design principles for each of them. And probably I'm just going to call out a quick architecture of what it is, and we'll do a hands-on and get your feedback over here, right? All right. So what I've put together is I'm just want to get your feedback and your details based on your experience. This is the given architecture. What would you change based on the pillars in there? And I've just put some random details and parameters. Given that, what would be your suggestion to change, or what is the best practices that is being followed? Maybe you can call it out in the comments, and this will help us out. Maybe I'll just take about 30 seconds to wait in for the comments here. So, okay, so I think just in interest of time, so few things that are in place is ensure that we are right sizing with CPU utilization always lower than 10%. Instance review done only 2 years ago. So it has to be done more frequently. Account strategy, all in one account, that is something that we would advise. We spread it out based on the accounts that is being used, right? Or the based on the projects and the that is being conducted. So every project has its own account, or every department has its own account. That way you reduce the blast radius. That's one. Pricing plan, if you have right size, move over to using savings plan and RI. And on-prem connectivity, as Ahmed has suggested in the comments, rather than over the internet, use a VPN to secure the network, in transit. And backups, here they have automated using Lambda, but why not use AWS backup as the team showcased in What's New in AWS session. It's now available even for Windows. Why not use it, right? So these are the few things that we could do based on this. Maybe you could take a call and see how you could improvise in your infrastructure, in your organization using these principles, and have a look at them, right? So yeah, I think that's about that. This is a quick introduction of what BlazeClan and who BlazeClan is, and and a few of our competencies. So I think, yes, I think we are good, Rob. Just in case if we need to have any questions, we can move on to there in interest of time.
Hi, Kaushik. Thank you very much for that. Oh, shit. That was awesome. I thought I was on mute again for some reason, but apparently not. All right, so this is the chance for everybody to ask any questions that you might have. Let's see. It's been fairly active, but no questions have come in so far.
Right.
All right, we've had a question come through. Let me just pull that in.
Yeah.
So Aryan has asked, do you have any tips for anybody who wants to do their own well-architected review?
Of course. So yes. So what you could do is first, as a guide to do a well-architected review, use the well-architected tool that is available on AWS console. If you could just go to the AWS console right away, if you're in front of your system, well-architected tool, that will the set of the checklist that you need to ensure that you want to do for your ecosystem that will help you build the guideline, and a solution architect in your team would be able to articulate what could be, and identify what is the low-hanging fruit, short-term goals, mid-term goals, and the long-term goals, and then have that done. Or the other thing is reach out to well-architected partners like BlazeClan and others, where in your region, reach out to them and they could help you to do the review and help you out with these recommendations as well. So just to add on to that, like as BlazeClan, we did these reviews, automate the review process using tools like Cloudlytics, and then help customers doing that. Yeah.
Great. We had another question come through on Slack from Anders. Let me just bring that up. Nothing's working right today. So Anders has asked, what are enterprises' major challenges when adopting the well-architected framework, and specifically the security pillar?
So for enterprises, one concern is it's rather than, for me, based on whatever I've done, first thing is more of a cultural problem. When we do a review and we figure out some issues, they are offended and they defend themselves because it is seen like a loophole that we are showing to the management or to the larger team because of this. So it's not a technical thing, but you asking that with enterprises, this is one major thing that we figure out. On the technical side, the challenges that they face is, because as an enterprise, they are so entrenched into multiple systems the way they are, and even a small change would impact multiple downstream systems. That requires a lot of run through and thorough check to ensure that whatever changes are being done, as small as changing a security group which was open to the internet and closing that particular port to one specific range, might take a few weeks to get an approval and everything in place. So as an enterprise, these are the concerns that we have seen. And in enterprise reviews that we do, mostly they have best practices in place, set up in place, but it's more of cultural adoption and, let's say, the process change which is required to be done at their end, because they in most of the cases, the low-hanging fruits would be identifying the specific users and slotting them into groups and ensuring they have least access and least privilege access, and that's what is in most of the cases. These are the first few discussions that we would have in enterprise.
Do you think that the processes that enterprises employ for this sort of thing, do you think that helps or hinders adopting the well-architected review?
So because of the policies that they have in place, it hinders the entire process. It becomes a time-consuming process, because of which many people don't want to adopt that, right? And as I said, in an enterprise, it's mostly siloed out, and when we do these reviews, we do it across departments, and that's when we get different policies from different places, which is not in sync, and then they get to know, oh, okay, you're following this policy, and that's how it is. So well-architected framework, the reviews that we do, the policies for them is a hindrance, but during the reviews, it helps them to figure out what are the best practices that are happening across other departments and silos.
Cool. We've had a flurry of questions come through. We might just take one more in the interest of time. So post that up. So Ben Peters asked, could you give an example of the most important security events in your experience that you should be prepared for?
Right. So the security event in most cases is the least that you would expect to happen. And it could be the smallest issues and the most common use of IAM credentials and published to a public Git repository.
Right.
Right. So this is the most common, and because of the lack of education at all levels, right from the someone joining in as a fresher into an organization, right to the to the team lead, that education is not the same between all of them, and that because of that, the practice is in place, and they don't have a particular practice in place, and hence what happens? Someone is working it out with with the admin access,
Yep.
uses that code, wants to showcase it, his new achievement to the world, puts it out to Git repository, and then we've had an account which has been spinning instances, 8x large instances, and huge sum of bill in just about in a matter of 5 hours.
Wow.
And so that's one of the most common problems that many customers face.
Yeah, I've definitely been hit by that one before. Some of the developers I've worked with have got the email from, I think it's from GitHub or AWS that says, "Hey, you've published credentials here," and yeah,
Exactly.
but they can still do a lot of damage before that process picks it up, unfortunately.
So yes. So,
Great, thank you very much for all of that. There's a number of questions in going on in the chat now on YouTube, if you don't mind having a look after this.
Sure, maybe I'll reply over comments and then add my thoughts in there.
That would be great. Thank you very much for that. That was a great presentation. It's a while since we've had such a deep dive into some of the pillars of well-architected framework, and it's definitely something you need to review regularly. So thank you very much again.
I appreciate it.
All
Thank you for having me, Rob. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you. Okay. So while we get switched over on the backgrounds for screen sharing, our second presentation for tonight is from Ian, who obviously needs no introduction as the Duke of Fargate. He's going to be filling the missing gaps on AWS. We'll switch over to that now.
Well, hey everyone, I'm back. Working around AWS, filling in the missing gaps. So, as I mentioned earlier during the presentation, I'm going to use AWS SSO as an example. And let's just start. First, hi. In case you're new here and don't know me, I work at DGL as a platform engineer, and like Kaushik, I'm an APN ambassador where I represent DGL CMD. You may not know, but I organized this really awesome meetup here in Melbourne. I do some writing and some podcasting and all of that stuff. Now, I'm going to make a statement here that some people might not agree with, but apparently I found over the years that AWS is not perfect. Yes, this comes as a shock, or most likely it doesn't really come as a shock. Now, to demonstrate this, and I'll use a little story. 2 years ago, I was at reInvent. Obviously, this year, all of us will be at reInvent because it's virtual, probably while we are asleep, but, we'll still be here. At this 2 years ago, though, I got this nice little Lego figure there. It's great. Love it. And I've enjoyed it all the time, and when I finally put it together about a month ago, I noticed it was missing a piece. So the face shield here with the nice AWS logo, you should be able to put that on there in the middle. Obviously, As you can see, there's no piece for that. The piece was not in the box. And in a way, it represents the fact that AWS gives us a lot of building blocks, but sometimes the one building block that you want is not there. So what do? We use a bit of blue tech or some other way to solve that. I saw that, Rob. Thank you. So that's what I'll be talking about today. How do we implement this little bit of blue tech or similar things? Because something is missing, broken, ugly, it's bad, it's terrible. That's how things can be. And this is simply because no matter how much we would like it, the people at AWS have different priorities than we do. They may not encounter the same issues. Yes, it would be perfect if everybody at AWS thought exactly the same way I did. My life would be perfect, and it would be terrible for everybody else. So I'm not saying that when things are missing or not working the way I want them, that is necessarily a terrible thing. But it's also not something that makes me happy. As I said, I'm using AWS SSO as an example. I really enjoy AWS SSO as a service. It helps me with access control for both my personal organizations and some of the clients I work with. But it has its issues. So issues at AWS come in many ways. You can have console issues. For example, here you can see the permission sets in AWS SSO. If you're not familiar with it, permission sets are basically the IAM roles that you assign to people. When you go into the console for AWS SSO, you get a list, and you go to the permission sets section, you have a list of all your permission sets. Unfortunately, they do not happen to be sorted in any way that I can recognize. If you add a new permission set, the whole thing might get reshuffled. They're definitely not sorted alphabetically. As we will see later on, they're also not sorted by internal names. So it's really, the way I describe it, they're sorted by rand 0. This is not great. And it's something I've complained about, and I will keep complaining about. Now, when it comes to console issues, as Rob just already pointed out, the first thing you really need to do is go on Slack, go to the AWS console issues channel, post a screenshot, obviously take out any identifying information of your issue, and make sure we can all laugh about it, because that's what we like to do.
It does make you feel a lot better.
Yep. And in a more serious note, as has been pointed out to me by people as well, there is this nice feedback button at the bottom left. So go there, fill in all your complaints. I know that quite a few people in our Slack have done that lately when AWS introduced their new menu bar. I haven't seen any of that feedback incorporated. I'm assuming that somebody actually reads the feedback and hopefully will act on it. In addition, obviously, if you are in a situation where you can do so, talk to your technical account manager, solutions architect, random friend at AWS, tell them about your problems. Maybe you'll end up having a chat with like a service team, talk about it there. Will that always be useful? No. As I said, they may have different priorities. So what we can do instead is build our own solution. So as I said, as mentioned earlier, AWS now has the APIs available. These APIs, they are nice enough, as in they give you the chance to get the information you want. Unfortunately, they're also very cumbersome and full of internal IDs. I'm glad to see that confirmation that the feedback is not ignored. So thank you for that, Anshu. Now, for building our own solutions, something that I personally use is this little project I built. I've been working on it for the past 4 years now, and it has a bunch of things that I want to do that I can't get out of the straight APIs. In this case, what I really wanted was a way to just list the permission sets in the account alphabetically and show me which accounts they are assigned to, what policies they have, all those things. So I built that. It was basically more or less the first thing I did after the APIs were released, or rather, I did it in the weekends because unfortunately work kept me busy and they wouldn't let me work on my private little things. It's sometimes the downside of actually working. But I spend my weekend building these kind of things. Now, as I said, this may not be something that you think is pretty. I can't say that it's the prettiest thing to me, but it gives me exactly what I want. And that is what I'm talking about here. None of us have all the skills, but we do have things that we want to achieve. And by building your own solutions, you can do that. So aside from just listing the permission sets, there were other things that I wanted to do here. So when I'm thinking about how can I fill these gaps, and let me be clear, I'm talking now about the management layer of AWS, but the same principles apply when you are only using AWS to run your application and don't really care about what's underneath. But there might be the offerings from AWS might be missing a feature, or a feature might not work exactly the way you want it. So what we like to do, or at least I like to do, but I may be a bit different than all of you. I like to think I'm not, but yeah, who knows? Basically, I just start with how can I achieve my goal? And in this case, I started with, okay, what questions do I have? How can I find unused permission sets just so that I can clean up stuff that isn't actually used? How can I find the people who were added directly to a permission set instead of using groups, which usually means that somebody with admin access added somebody manually when obviously they shouldn't have, because that is not how things work. Or maybe how can I have a nice overview of who has what access in which account, or the access levels per account, which is a similar thing, but just the other way around. So these are questions that I try to answer and I work on. Again, the first step, usually, if you really want something, talk to them as a friend at AWS, post feedback in the feedback form, any of those things, because the best solution is one that you don't have to build yourself. Many of us will have stories where either they themselves or one of their colleagues or friends will have built something, and you've solved a difficult problem, something that was bugging you for a long time, and a day, maybe a week after you finally are done with it, no matter how much time you have spent on it, it could be a couple of hours, it could be weeks, months, it could be a massive project. And then AWS rolls out one of their 7,000 announcements per year, and it is exactly what you just built. This can be either good or bad. It means if it's exactly what you want, it's great. Yes, you may have wasted a bit of time, but on the other hand, you learn things. However, if you have a chance to talk to somebody, especially if you have NDAs with your team or with your take 3 for this slide. Hopefully, actually audio as well. Technical issues happen, and as I shared when nobody could hear me, we probably should have built our own solution instead of trusting YouTube. But in the meantime, let's go back to the presentation. We need to, this diagram here, this is actually a slightly redacted version of a diagram that my AWS tools tool has generated for me. It doesn't generate the diagram itself, but it generates something you can copy paste into draw.io, and then it spits out this nice little diagram. It shows me exactly the thing I wanted, who has access to what, and why is there some annoying person there who has direct access to something instead of going through a group. That's good. Obviously, I didn't build this from the start. When I started out, all my tool did was spit out some IAM roles, and the speech has doubled according to the comments now. Hope that is not the case. I'll keep on going and hope that it's not. Yeah. So technical issues. Life is so much easier when you can go and meet people in person. Now, tools don't start out this way. We don't always have everything working out of the box completely great. And a good example of that is we've had Ian Mackay talk to us a couple months back. He has built some fantastic tools, and I can guarantee you they didn't start out immediately as polished as they are by the end when he publishes them. In Ian's case, that may have been a case of 5 minutes later, but we can't all be like him. That's okay. So basically what I'm saying is when you build your own solutions, start with a simple step. Do something that you just want to answer now. Basically, find a small issue, something that annoys you. Whether it is something in the API that makes it very annoying for you to find the information you need, and build something around it. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just something small and build on top. Maybe in the end, you end up with an iOS app like Rob is building, or maybe you just have a bunch of command line tools that help you, which is what is the case for me mostly. So an example for that is if I do something for, find unused permission sets. And if I wanted to do that over the API, I would have to run all of these commands: AWS SSO admin list permission sets, which then needs the SSO instance as an identifier, because even though you can only have one SSO instance, you need to provide it all the time, which is fine. Leaves room for future growth, but it's annoying. Similarly, that's just the first step, because all this does is it spits out a list of ARMs. Then, so you might want to then see the details of the permission set, which is yet another command, which is describe permission set, and you provide the ARN of the permission set that you want, and then you can finally see the name. Then you can list the accounts for the permission set, where it shows you the account IDs of the accounts you want. But maybe you want pretty names for the account IDs. Right? So that is, or the aliases is not really a pretty name, because they have their own annoyances. But so as you can see, even something that is fairly simple, doing it all through the API is annoying. It takes a lot of time, a lot of work. And if I didn't already have my AWS tools built where I can build everything in Go, which I like to do, I would have created some shell script wrappers around this so that I would be able to have just a single command and get this information, because it's the kind of thing that I want to have access to many times. So this way I get what I want without too much work on my side. Well, a one-time investment in time and effort. But after that, it's a lot easier. So here you can see exactly what I mean. I ran list permission set and the accounts, and then I still have to describe the permission set to actually get the name. So if you have a bigger account, this is obvious. This is my playground organization, so to speak. Most of these permission sets aren't needed because I did not follow Kaushik's advice, and as you can see here, I have admin access to everything. Yes, it's not great, but it's also only my own personal stuff. And nobody else has access to it, I hope. So things like this is just how you get started. Sometimes, though, you may have no knowledge of coding. I can't teach you to code. I don't necessarily think you need to be able to code. You can run into problems without being a developer. But often you will be able to find people, say you have your job and you want to achieve something, you can ask your colleagues to build it. They may not always be able to help you. So again, everybody has their own priorities. But say you have some ideas of, hey, I would really like this. Asking doesn't hurt. But it's how I've added some of the features to my tooling as well. Just somebody else needed it, and I think it's fun to build. So don't be shy, and even feel free to ask me. Not all the time, and don't expect instant fixes for it, but So with that, I'll just leave it here. My tool itself is, I know it's almost sounded like a promotion. I didn't mean to promote the tool, but in case it is something that you think is interesting, you can find it on GitHub. You can download it. It doesn't work perfectly for everybody, probably. But as I said, I built it for myself, and for that, it works well. And as they like to say at AWS, and that matches my personal preference of developer language, go build. With that, I will leave it. And if anybody has some questions, please ask them now.
Great talk, Ian. Thank you very much. I appreciate you also struggling through the technical issues that we had there. I'm pretty sure that the broadcast software just died, and then Skype died, and then everything died. So it was great. So I had 3 goes at getting it back up, but we got there in the end. So don't forget to ask any questions you have in any of the places. We've got a few channels, no questions at the moment, but feel free to give it an ask. How many tools do you have in there now, Ian?
Just in the one tool, let me just have a quick look. What do I have things for App Mesh, CloudFormation, IAM, organization, SSL, Transit Gateway, you can see. Usually, if you look at documentation, you can see, or if you look at the commits in the repo, you will see exactly when I was working on something. Because I had a problem. Yep.
So you basically, so I guess once you've got a framework there for your own command line tools, so it's a lot easier to add extra tools in now when you find something missing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's also how certain things like the diagram generation came to be. I think I built that when I was doing things with AppMesh, because AppMesh doesn't have a nice way of viewing all the services that you connect in it. And I wanted a way to do that. So again, I built it because that was the only way I expected to be able to do so.
Right. Yep. And yeah, I can see you've got quite a lot in here, but you've also been working on it for a very long time, like 16 months or more, if not.
Yeah, about 4 years is this one.
About 4 years.
Yeah.
Yep. Like I think that's the same way that my tools like this have grown as well. They start very small and then you tack on a little bit, and then they just grow a lot over time. Are you at the point yet where it's very hard for you to work without them? Like, do you lose your productivity if you don't have access to them anymore?
Not really. These are usually what I put in here are things that I need not super frequently, but then would be a lot of effort to do.
Yep.
In a different way. So I prefer to usually just stick to the provided tools, mostly because then if there are any updates to API or things like that, I don't have to incorporate those changes.
Yep, that makes sense. I guess you go on site a lot too, so it's always good to be able to work with whatever's in front of you without any loss of productivity. Okay, it doesn't look like we've had any questions come through. Definitely recommend you go and check out the GitHub link that Ian posted. Hopefully Ian can post that into the Slack as well after this. Thank you very much, Ian. That was a great look at building out your own tool set and stuff like that, which is something that I don't think enough people do, and the barrier to doing it is actually really low. Like we all start out with no knowledge of this sort of stuff, so yeah, definitely worth checking out. And hey, you can always build on top of the AWS tools package that Ian's already put up for you, so definitely give it a go. Thank you very much, Ian. I'll go and close the show out now. Okay, so that's it for another month. Thank you very much to Kashuk and Ian for that. Let me find where my slides are. Hopefully these ones work better than my other slides did earlier today. Doesn't look like they will. Yay, we got about. All right, so our next event is in October, the 28th of October, I think. Obviously the last Wednesday in October. Let's see if I can move on to the next slide or if it's gonna... No, it's not going to. A big thank you to our sponsors, Enabler, AC3, CMD, and Do It International, for their support again for this event. A big thank you to our speakers tonight. Thank you to JM as well for jumping in on the news as well. And that's it. I wonder if this will work. And now we have the virtual Zoom drinks to the virtual pub, whatever you want to call it. I'll post the link in Slack as soon as I close down the stream. We'll see you all there. Otherwise, we'll see you again next month. Thanks everyone for watching.